Hello and welcome to a new video on the Lambo TV channel. Yesterday I recorded a bunch of my letter games that I played off stream, so this is completely new footage. And I played around with a couple of new strategies. So this was my first try at a 15 pool proxy hatch. So this is something that I don't think, at least I at the very least, have never seen it before. And it is something that is obviously safe against any sort of all-in. Since you have the early pool, it's super safe against cannon rush, and it can force your opponent to overreact. This is something that could be very, very powerful, especially below the highest level of play, where the opponent will overreact. The moment they see the hatchery, there's a very high chance that they're gonna either make a forge or make too many gateways. Maybe go 2-gate, pull a couple of probes on top of it, and you're already going to be ahead from that. So the build order was 15 pool, then we extracted trick out another drone, then we make an overlord, then we make 2 more drones, I think is what I did, and eventually we will go for a 17 proxy hatch. You send, from the second extractor trick, you send the drone across. The extractor tricks are just to minimize the amount of idle larva time, where you have 3 idle larva, because then you don't produce any extra larva, so then you put your hatch in a way where it's difficult for your opponent to full wall, and then you make 8 zerglings. That's basically the build order. This is honestly complete freestyle. Like, this is not a real build order that I checked before, and you know, this is the perfect way of doing it. It is basically just freestyle, but in this case I played against Trigger, so a top NA player, top 3, top 4 NA player, I guess. And yeah, you will see how it works here. This is the very first attempt. In this case, I made a queen just in case he wants to pylon block for a second, and then I cancel the queen in order for the earlier hatch. I make 8 links, as I said, and afterwards I just drone and make a queen. From that point on, if my opponent was to play a 2-gate, which I see that he doesn't, he pulled the probes, I would probably stay on 2 base for a little longer, but since he did pull the probes, instead I'm gonna go for a fast 3-hatch setup, because I don't think he can really punish me for it. Now I have the 8 links, I can try to get us around on the Zealot, you can try to deal some damage, but the moment the Adept pops, you already want to be far enough away that the Adept cannot chase down your Zerglings. So here I'm going to try to get a probe, or the Zealot if he lets me, but he microed quite well, so instead I'm just settling for the economic damage that I already dealt with the probe pull that he did, plus the Zealot that he made, and then on top of it we delay a gas. So since we now know that he's on 1 gas, we already know it can't be a Stargate opener, which is pretty nice to know as well. Eventually we take our gas for a delayed speed. It is, you don't actually need the early speed unless your opponent plays 2-gate in this case. And if your opponent plays 2-gate, you also don't need early speed, because we wouldn't take a 3rd hatch. So in this case, we see, okay, the Adept stayed at home. I was waiting for a little bit to see if we can surround in the middle of the web with 8 Zerglings. If you have good micro and if the process is not paying perfect attention, you always have a chance to do so. So now we see there's a 2nd gate, and we saw that there's a 2nd Adept, where I want to wait for the next gateway unit to make sure that it's not a stalker before we send in the Overlord. I make 1 extra pair of links since we're playing without link speed. Go for a creep tomb at the front, and at this point you just play like you usually would. We drone up our mineral lines first, we get speed, and then since we know this is not a Stargate opener, we're gonna get a Roachborn eventually. So we can just follow this shade with the Zerglings that we have, since we have enough Zerglings. We don't really need to worry about him shading in on top of 10 Zerglings. That would be pretty weird. Now if this was a Stargate, I would have made an extra queen in the main here, so I would have 2 in the main, 2 in the natural. Since I know this cannot be a Stargate, which we obviously scouted with the drone, we now instead make 2 extra drones instead of that queen until 44, and then we're gonna get a Roachborn eventually. And what I'm gonna do in this game is I'm gonna go for a 2nd gas, because I know 100% it's gonna be Glaives. Now how do I know that? You're about to see. With the Overlord here, we scout, okay, this Twilight is researching. If you don't know the difference between a Twilight researching and not researching, the things on the sides, the wings of the Twilight, I'm just going to call them now, are a little bit higher, and the light goes up in a quicker rhythm. It's pretty obvious if you take a look at 2 Twilights next to each other, and one of them is not researching, the other one is. If you don't know the difference from just looking at it, like here, you should practice so you can actually tell the difference. It's a pretty big tell. Obviously, you can tell if it's GT or not. Even if they go GT, they can sometimes fake it, but most of the time they don't. So it can help you in your defense. Now, since I know it's Glaives, we're going to mass Zerglings on 2 gas, 38 drones. and then make a couple of roaches. So I wanted to go for the Ravager response. I made 4 roaches to morph into Ravagers. Since I know 100% that it's glaives, this is quite a decent response. I usually don't do this, but since I was already trying out different stuff in this game, I figured I might as well. So here he comes. Warps in a lot of adapts, so we need to we need to make sure to not morph the Ravagers right in front, because Ravagers now take quite a while to morph. So we know that, okay, he cannot shade in here. So now we morph the rest of the roaches into Ravagers, because he can't jump onto those. They're far enough back at this point. So now all we need to make sure is that he can't shade in, and then the next thing we need to make sure of is that he can't kill this hatchery. So now that his shade just expired, this would be a perfect time to pounce, which is exactly what I'm deciding here. He's trying to shade in here. We got the surround. We throw down a bunch of corrosive bites. Now he did shade 3 adapts in first, so we need to pull the drones away for a little bit, but that's still a pretty good trade. We kill those again. If you do these corrosive bite things, make sure to hold position, because sometimes the corrosive bites are not launched at the exact same time, which means like the first corrosive bite might already kill the adapts and then the zerglings run on top of them. So you don't want to lose any extra zerglings if you already know you have the secured kill. You just want to hold position it. And at this point, we're counterattacking while droning up. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to win that fight, so because the Ravagers weren't there yet. So I went back there initially with the Zerglings. Obviously, can't trade on top of me. So we're just zoning a little bit with the Ravagers, and then we're trying to go for this round. And we're trying to get some corrosive bites in. This time, though, we only got 3 of the adapts. That was pretty good. He almost escaped with more of them. And now we can try to kite. Obviously, we cannot really do anything about the super battery. Our units simply don't have enough DPS, but since we're droning throughout all of this and our opponent is not really taking up whatsoever, this still seems like a pretty good situation for us. Next round of Zerglings arrives just in time to make sure we get this Immortal, I believe. Yes, we do get it. Also, if you cross a bile, the moment your opponent warps in, you will always get the kill. They cannot avoid those. Like if he warps in the depths and you see it and you cross a bile on top of them, it's basically guaranteed kills. Now I'm just trying to use the range advantage of the Ravagers to hit and run a little bit against the Adept. 1 Ravager there for 1 Adept was not worth it. But overall, I feel pretty good with our position. Since I know our opponent spent a lot of money into extra Adepts and he already made Immortals, my plan at this point is to just mass Roach Ravager. And I think even if he is going to go for Disruptors, at this point, we should be fine with just attacking. So that's my new game plan. So we're taking a 4th hatchery here. We don't really care that much about our creep spread because we're planning on all-inning anyways. So we're gonna try to go up to, let's say, 150 supply with roaches, and then with the rest we're gonna reinforce it with extra zerglings, because those run across the map a little faster than roaches do. They also build faster than roaches do, and then we can use the extra gas to morph extra Ravagers at the front, which should help us. At this point, I'm also making sure that I know exactly what's going on. I don't want to be surprised by any type of weird Dark Shrine. We see that there is in fact a Robo Bay, so there is probably going to be 1 Disruptor by the time we attack, but we know that, okay, we're not going to wait until we're maxed out. Instead, we're going to go with, let's say, 160 supply. If he wasn't tacking up at all, I would have waited until we were maxed out, but since he's tacking up, we're gonna try to hit at around 160, 170 supply. That should be the perfect time where our economy paid off, because we had 66 drones quite quickly to then mass units and try to overwhelm our opponent. I also need to wait for roach speed. Obviously, my roach speed was not very quick this game. So now you can see me move across. I'm kind of predicting there should be an Adept run by at the top, but at this point I don't really care. Yeah, here you can see me make a spine. I thought, okay, for sure he's gonna run by the 2 adepts that he has, but now I see, okay, there's 1 home here. There's already the two batteries at the natural, so now we're gonna try to just dive the 3rd base. Very often it's the best thing to do is to run into the natural, because it's usually it usually has much less defensive structures than the 3rd base. Instead, it's the most obvious attack path you can take, but as you can see, we just have way too much for our opponent. We managed to unpower the super battery, which helped as well. The Disruptor got 1 Roach and 1 Ravager, which is not enough to pay off, and we got the win. And here I rewind to see how far ahead we were after the start. So this is after everything happened at the start. We're about even in drones. Usually you overtake the Protoss in a normal game at around 30, 436-ish drones is where you start taking the lead as a Zerg, and it looked like in this game we were pretty much doing that. But it's also a weird opener for our opponent, right? We have full scouting of everything. We know he can't go Stargate. Those are all nice things. And he didn't get to do whatever he wants in the early game. Like, this is a game at your pace. So if you like this builder, feel free to copy it. It was really just a prototype. You can even make it better if you test around with it. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, bye-bye.